Tara handles, in her part-time role, I guess, handles a great deal of personal injury and workers' compensation cases, and she's noted as one of the top lawyers in Delaware Today magazine. So let us again welcome Tara.
Hey guys, good morning. Hope you're enjoying breakfast. Good morning. All right, so I wanted to circle back before I get into how to get your bills paid. And I'm looking out, and I know a lot of the people here have a pretty good sense of how to get your bills paid. But there have been some changes, and not just COVID-related changes, but statutory changes, and just changes in personnel. Just huge turnover at insurance companies, turnover at our courts, turnover at the Industrial Accident Board. And going back to what Caroline was talking about, we have, there's a new individual at the Industrial Accident Board. Her name is Allison Stein. And she's fantastic. She has taken a very active role in bringing our Industrial Accident Board up to date, okay? So in my opinion, this will be my almost 18th year in workers' compensation. And I wouldn't even recognize what I'm looking at right now as far as how our forms are being changed, how everything is going online. I mean, this is really sad, but before, I don't know how often you visited the website for our Delaware Workers Compensation, the Industrial Accident Board website, but it was pretty tough to navigate. Okay, now that has been something that Allison has really gone at updating. Well, you'll also see just within the last couple of weeks, all of the forms, okay? So if you probably don't deal with them a whole bunch, but just in case, I try to be broader for you guys. All of the forms have had some sort of tweak to them. Okay, our pretrial memorandum and our petition for review has had the largest tweaks, but every form has had something to make it more up to date, more fresh. We also have our legal hearings are online now. She is really an advocate for bringing the workers' compensation group up to date. So if you go online, you're going to see the workers' compensation website has pretty significantly changed. And if you need help navigating through that, don't hesitate to reach out to us. She's also made it pretty clear. So two things. One, that's super important for you guys. If you have not renewed your healthcare provider certification, do that like now, okay? Because what happens when those lapse, I and all the attorneys that are here right now, we cannot get your bill paid. And there is no way around it, okay? So if that certification lapses, and it's a day, if there is a bill on that day, that bill shall never be paid. Okay, it doesn't matter that 6 months later you go and recert, you can't circle back and hope that that bill got paid. If there is a lapse, your bill will not be paid. And Allison Stein and the rest of the department, she's actually assigned an individual who is specifically going through those healthcare provider certifications, and you'll see that that list has also changed a little bit. When you looked at it before, it wasn't super user-friendly, okay? Just like kind of ghetto fabulous lines through stuff and everything. I'm like, wow, really? But they've updated that a little bit better now. Look on there, make sure it's up to date, make sure it's correct, because that can be a serious problem for you. She's also having this individual that has taken over being proactive with this, send letters out to all of the medical providers that have not recertified, saying recertified before you're coming off the list, okay? And I will tell you, I know our workers' compensation department, one of the first things we do when I'm taking a DEP is I go back on that recertification, I go back on that certified provider list, and I make sure you're on there, okay? Because if you're not, I have a stroke. Okay, so there's that. So you'll be seeing letters coming out. That certification is super important for you guys. She also said one of her big goals for 2023 is to overhaul the workers' compensation statute. That is an unbelievable undertaking, but if you look at our comp statute just generally, it is pretty outdated, okay? So you're just gonna see, just kind of generally for you guys, workers' compensation is going to be a big area of change. Our healthcare advisory panel in committee just met to go over new guidelines and new additions to the guidelines, and a lot of those have to do with pain management. So if your practice in any way involves pain management, you're really going to want to make sure you're staying up to date with our healthcare practice guidelines, because there are going to be some pretty substantial changes coming up in the near future to those practice guidelines. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go back now to what I'm actually supposed to be presenting on, which is how to get your bills paid. So we all know personal injury protection is out there. Somebody has a policy, you hear a motor vehicle accident, you think personal injury protection, okay? I would tell you, and I included this in with your written materials, and you probably saw it and immediately put it in the back because it's 12 pages, like 12-point font, but I tried to include the most I could for you guys. I mean, that statute is what we use as attorneys to make sure that the carrier is doing what they should be doing. And oftentimes what you see, before you even get to the really poorly written independent medical exam, is that these adjusters aren't always doing their job right either, okay? So right from the gate, before there's even an independent medical exam, they haven't processed the PIP application, and there's time limits. So I included that in there for you guys. I'm not going to recite all of that today because you'll probably exit right out of these doors right now. But there are time limits on all of these things. So if an adjuster doesn't get in and process a PIP application, we have teeth for that. And the teeth for that is that statute that's included in there for you, okay? So when a PIP adjuster says to me, yeah, I'm working on, processing this PIP application, I'm like, awesome, work a little harder, because we're absolutely gonna be going after penalties if you don't get that submitted, okay? And that delays getting you guys bills paid, getting our clients wages, our clients freaking out, the medical office is freaking out, so we wanna make sure that we're getting that done as quickly as possible. So right from the gate, things have to be forwarded with that PIP application, getting in, and I will tell you this too, the number of times that I have sat in a deposition and had someone throw the PIP application in my client's face that they filled out before they came into my office, I would have a lot of money if I got $1 for every time. Okay, and so it's really important, again, at the gate, and this is why it is, I hate to sound like, send them to me immediately, but it is helpful if they do seek counsel from the beginning, because that PIP application, describe your injury, describe the collision. A client can mess that up right at the gate, and right then and there, you have a written document with their signature. And that's, oh God, that's just awful to watch. This is your handwriting, right? This is your signature down here? Where you said you have a back injury but not a neck injury? Like, that's the type of stuff that, as you're watching it happen, again, I go back to making myself want to throw up, and that's one of the things that, you just want to make sure, again, they're getting some sort of advice on how to properly fill that out and submit it, and our paralegals here, phenomenal. They work on that with the clients, make sure that's being properly, filled out, so that from the inception of this personal injury protection claim, things are going as they should be. So familiarize yourself with the statute. There are timelines in there, helpful information as far as what needs to be submitted. If you're just submitting the bill, my client will say that, but I sent them the bill, but if they don't have the record to support what the bill is, they're not gonna pay it, okay? They're not gonna, that's why they have you fill out that authorization in the beginning. They need the record to make sure that the bill is proper as well, okay? Again, if the PIP app hasn't been completed properly, if that hasn't been submitted, the clock isn't starting then either. Don't give them an excuse to not pay a bill. And that's a really easy one, okay? PIP can exhaust, as we all know. And sometimes my client will call me and tell me that they got a letter before I even have the letter, okay? Sometimes a medical provider will call me and say, hey, tried to submit a bill and they told me that PIP's exhausted. Okay, the sooner we're all on the same page, the better. But we try to make sure that when we do find that exhaustion letter, we're reaching out to the provider to let them know PIP's exhausted. All right, what do we got? What's the next plan here? Are we doing health insurance? Are we possibly looking at a letter of protection? What's the next step? Is there a whole nother layer of personal injury protection that we can be looking into? Okay, and I want to talk about that for a second. So I sometimes feel like when people hear this is a slip and fall case, they're like, hey, PIP doesn't apply, right? This is a slip and fall, motor vehicle's not involved, there's no PIP. Be careful with that, okay? Because I've had a number of cases where my client is in a parking lot or they're getting into their car that morning and they slip and fall right there by their car, opening their door. PIP is available there, okay? You have PIP coverage. And there are a number of Delaware cases where this has been litigated and people have been successful in obtaining personal injury protection coverage for their clients. So don't always necessarily assume that a slip and fall means no PIP, okay? What you also want to make sure you're looking out for is, you assume, my client took the bus here, they don't have a car, probably no PIP. Well, take a look. Maybe that public carrier service also has personal injury protection, okay? Maybe that Uber, that Lyft, whatever. There's all kinds of different layers of coverage. Don't always make the assumption that because this person doesn't have a car, that what they were involved in might not have some sort of applicable personal injury protection. The other thing to be aware of is when we're looking at these cases, right from the gate, we are looking for multiple layers of personal injury protection coverage, okay? So in Delaware, it's following the vehicle that you were in, okay? Different in every state. Some states may say, and it always, it blows people's mind. They'll call me and say, why did they just say that it doesn't matter what car they're in, it matters what their household coverage was? Because it's different in every state, okay? And in Delaware, it's gonna follow the car. Okay, but what we also look at is who did this person live with, okay? Did they live with their mother, their sister, who also has a motor vehicle policy and also has personal injury protection coverage, okay? Because if they do, we can potentially tap into that as well. There can be a whole nother layer. Okay, but there are things that we have to go through. There can be applicable exclusions in that policy. We got to take a look at a number of different things before we determine if that policy is applicable, but I'm definitely going to take a shot at that. Same applies if you've heard of uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. We take a look at those layers in those cases as well. Okay, so that's where, sometimes it can be like, all right, I think I can manage this by myself. But when you hear stuff like that, applicable layers of coverage, that's where you really want to make sure you do. I think an attorney is very helpful to have, because looking into every angle where you